Good morning, Opening Pathways viewers. This is Tom Lenoble. It is great to be with you again. Today I have Tory Bjorklund with us. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Victoria Fide Consulting. Tory, welcome to Opening Pathways.
Thanks so much, Tom. I'm excited to be here with you.
It's great to have you here. To get started this morning, what I would love to do is have you tell the viewers a little about your company and what sparked your idea to start it.
Sure. Well, it starts out with the fact that I've been in the consulting business since 1987 and helping companies to implement significant technology, uh, uh, projects and whatnot. But um, I, as my career advanced, my companies advanced, we got involved in bigger and bigger enterprise level companies and projects, and began to see what a lot of people know, the statistics are really poor as far as the success of major enterprise level technology projects. And we began to see the same the same success rate, which is basically between 70 to 90% failure, depending on whose statistics you take and how you define success. And now even MIT, for example, just came out in July of 2025 with a study of 300 enterprise AI projects that 95% of them had zero return on them. So it's just rampant. And so I decided to start a new form of consulting. Victoria Fide is Latin for success assurance, where the primary focus of the company is that we measure success only by the client's success in their significant technology projects. And our goal is to have in 10 years 95% success rate as measured by the customer's success criteria. So that's really what this is all about. What my company is about is making sure that companies can succeed with their significant technology implementations.
Great. You just brought back my 4 years of Latin in high school. I loved Latin so much, and I often people will say when they hear that, well, what did you do with it? And while I don't walk around speaking it, I know that it was instrumental in helping me with words I didn't know, as well as root words and many other things during my life that and I loved it. I had a wonderful teacher, and I just couldn't get enough of it. I don't know why, but I couldn't get enough of it. So you just brought back a fond memory. Thank you.
Well, I like to say everybody should have a little more Latin in their life.
There you go. There you go. I'm going to dig in now more about you. I want to know
Sure.
about you a little bit more. So tell me this, how are you fundamentally different from when you started this path with Victoria?
Yeah, well, I'm maybe more humble, frankly. It's been a lot more challenging. I knew it was going to be challenging, but it has been more challenging than I anticipated. And I've been successful in past businesses, and I really expected this to grow and scale much quicker than it has. And so that's one thing is I'm really just reevaluating, how good am I at the business side of things? I know I'm really, we're having tremendous success with our clients and with the projects and stuff, but growing this business has been a real challenge, and it's humbled me, frankly.
Yes, I hear that. I hear that frequently from people. I don't know if it's the time we're in or if it's really always been that way. I know I experience it myself, and I try to remind myself that sometimes we're right on the precipice, right? And there's so many stories we know about that at the last minute. I talked to a guy on a podcast this past year, and his business is thriving, and literally a week before success happened, he was closing it down.
Mm.
And one phone call shifted it. And I think that really does bring me up a question is when do you know how or when to pivot or push through?
Yeah, that's a really difficult question. And here's what I look at. First of all, I want to be driven by our vision for the company, and that's not going to pivot. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I want to be guided by the principles of the company, the values of the company. Those are not going to pivot. So now it's down to the strategy, and that's what pivots, right? And so we lay out a strategy every year for the next year. So we have our strategy for 2026. And in that strategy, then we lay out uh, roughly 4 to 7 goals that we can measure and everything to make sure that that strategy is actually working. And so those are the outcomes that we're looking for. And we look at those then quarterly to determine, first of all, is this the right strategy? Are we reaching our objectives? Secondly, are the objectives right? Sometimes they're not right. Sometimes we decide, you know what, let's quit trying to pursue this. It's actually not getting us where we need to go in the long run. And so we're doing that quarterly. Um, and then you get into more often kind of the day to day, and those are the smaller strategies. Let's say from a marketing perspective, um, we, I've become much quicker, to fail. Let's say fail fast. I would say in the past we'd spend a lot more time, energy, and money on a marketing strategy, and it's not working, and give it a little more time. I'm now moving on a lot quicker, and saying that's not working, and we do look for leading indicators. We try to measure, so every strategy, whether it's on the day-to-day level or whether it's quarterly or annual, I want to have leading indicators that'll tell us whether or not, that strategy is working. And and then if we're not seeing those leading indicators, we start asking the question, how do we pivot? How do we keep the strategy and do it differently? Or do we scrap the strategy and re-strategize around this?
I love this. I love that you brought up values. It's one of my favorite questions to ask is, what are your personal values and which one has deepened most recently?
Um, well, I have several personal values, and I thought you were going to ask me about the company, so I got to pivot in my mind real quick. But my personal values revolve around faith, family, really are probably top two. Relationships in general. That relationships are far more important than business outcomes, for example. And um, and so a couple of things on that. Number one, because this company has been, and the growth of this company has been humbling to me, it's required me to depend much more on my faith and say, okay, my value doesn't come from success in this. And I can fail. I can fail at this and still be okay. Um, so that's one thing is that I think it's deepened my faith in that way. But also, I started with two partners in this business, and I ended up needing to buy out one of my partners. And he is a young man that I mentored from early in his career, and became so close that he's actually from India. And when he was married here in the States several years ago, my wife and I stood in place as proxy for his parents who couldn't come over from India. So I was that close to him. His children call me Bumpa, and my wife Nana. So we're basically grandparents to his children. So very, very close. And so then in the midst of this business, having to separate out, really highlighted, okay, the need for maintaining relationships, that the relationship needs to stay strong. It needs to be the priority in this. difficult, and it was a difficult time. It was difficult for us to separate and in business, but we were able to do it successfully. And actually, I just came back from there celebrating a third birthday of
Oh,
their first son this weekend. So my wife and I were down there and spent time with them. We have a great relationship, and I'm just really happy that we were able to maintain that close of a relationship. So something again that through this difficult challenge has proven to deepen for me the need for and value of relationships like that.
hmm. So, for me, and I've talked to others and asked this questions, um, you know, there's usually someone in our early years that has something to do with who we are today. Someone was either a role model or somebody that was influential in our lives when we were a kid or somewhere around there. Who was that for you?
Yeah, there was a teacher that I had in I was going to say eighth grade. I think it was actually a ninth grade teacher. And unfortunately, I don't remember his name. And many times I wish that I could remember his name. And I tried to go back and find out, and I just haven't been able to uncover that. But he was my ninth grade teacher. And I was going through a pretty difficult time in my life at that time. And actually, halfway through my ninth grade year, I actually left home. And so I was 14 at the time. And he was actually a special ed teacher. So I was in special education, um, and a lot of it having to do with just the craziness in my life and not being able to focus on school. But this guy was just really amazing, encouraging. I mean, to the point, for example, in this class, he was talking about the need to vote for it. They were having the class president and vice president and whatnot voting. And he was saying, you need to vote for somebody that you think is really going to bring leadership to your class and stuff like that. And he actually suggested that they nominate me for class president. I mean, just totally shocked me. But this guy was just quite an encourager, and he saw capacity for leadership in me and capability. And so that was one person that really had an
Yeah.
impact on me. And then I had a mentor who was also pastor at my church in North Dakota when I was 19 years old, from 19 to 22 years old. And he and I were his name is Tom Schmidt, and his wife Sandy. I actually called her Ma. She was like a mother to me, and they were just really instrumental in helping me get my feet under me and at a really difficult time in my life. And I actually followed them to Minnesota. That's how I ended up in Minnesota, where I'm now. And that was,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, aren't these experiences with teachers are interesting? I know my first 3 years in grammar school were a little wild. I can tell stories about them, but when I finally got to fourth grade, I think, being labeled as hyperactive and a number of other things. They didn't use those terms back then, but that was the equivalent of it, and not being focused. And I had this teacher, Miss Barrett, and it was really great. She realized that I was simply bored, that I would
Mhm.
finish my work and then, I mean, I would have nothing else to do. So she gave me, we had a little door outside and there was a little garden. And she gave me this permission that I could, when I finished work, go out in this garden. And it was a huge shift in what happened and a trajectory for what was happening for me. And I love that when we can recount these teachers in our lives. I've had many more that influenced us,
Yeah.
along with, of course, the people that were in our life growing up sometimes. When has life asked you to slow down recently?
Well, yeah, in a few different ways. So I'm quite active, and I do a lot of activities like I still play hockey twice a week. I still work out, do powerlifting 3 times a week. But I've been having problems with my knee and my shoulder, and I've been going through physical therapy with that. And they asked me to stop all use of a barbell for powerlifting, which is I've been doing for years, 10 years or more. And I'm like, that's been really difficult. And I'm doing a completely different type of workouts, and just really listening to my body, making sure that I'm getting up there in years now and making sure that my 62-year-old body is getting the care and nurturing
Yeah.
that it needs, and not pushing it quite so hard. So in a personal way, that's been a slowdown for me recently. But I did learn to slow down and limit my hours at work and things like that many years ago. Fortunately, while I still had children at home, and I had to, I had to learn to slow down, and it was difficult, but that was many years ago. But I'm still learning that lesson in other areas,
Yeah. I
and
think
lowering the intensity a little bit. And
I think it's an ongoing lesson that especially those of us that are still young in our mind and even maybe our heart, that we have to
yeah,
remember every now and then the body that didn't change the aging of the body no matter how well we take care of it, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me this, what has been your relationship with risk, and how has it changed since you've been with Victoria and doing this mission with Victoria? What's
Yeah.
risk changed like?
Well, so I've always been a risk taker all my life, and I had to learn how to monitor the risk more so. I used to be kind of the leap before you look type of a person, and uh, and but since I've been successful in business in the past, I had bigger cushion to work with and things like that, and I could set amounts that I'm going to invest. And what I found was that allowed me to take risks that with Victoria Fide that I wasn't free to take in the past. Um, and they've proven to be risky. And I really, I'm kind of, I decided at the beginning of 2025 that, you know what, this business likely won't succeed if I don't shoestring it. I need to treat it like I don't have the luxury of just continuing to invest money in it. And so we made some significant changes. Just I said, okay, I'm going to stop putting money in after the first quarter of 2025, and it's going to have to sink or swim at this point. So that again, made it. I guess it made the risk of failing higher, right? Because I took away a source of funding. But it also made, I think, increased the likelihood of long-term success and made the company stronger. And I think we're stronger and better for it.
Hmm. Hmm. Tell me this, what's something about leadership nobody prepared you for?
First of all, I would say that I was surprised when I realized I was a leader. That maybe sounds strange, and I mean I've always been entrepreneurial and things like that. But my early companies, I started my first company when I was 17. It was I was a solopreneur at the time. Um, so I it's just that when I turned around and at a company, kind of looked behind me and realized that I've got 70 people following me and looking to me for leadership. And I, I that was for some reason, I was just surprised that even though I was leading, a company like that, I just, it hadn't really sunk in. And so it surprised me how, I guess, how significantly people in your company tie their wagon to yours. And I just really wasn't prepared for that. I was prepared for making decisions, but I wasn't prepared for recognizing, I think, the impact, the personal impact that those decisions make on the individuals who are putting an incredible honor in their risking parts of their career and whatnot in the company by choosing to come to work at my company. That was sobering to me, and it really made me think a lot more about how to involve people in the success of the company. I've thought about delegation, but I never thought about really how to properly delegate responsibility for
Mhm.
success of the overall company to everybody in the company. And I began that journey at that time. And I read a book. Uh, oh, now I'm going to have trouble remembering who it was. Jack Spratt, I think. Jack, yeah, something like that. They bought. They had the. He helped the employees buy the Caterpillar engine remanufacturing facility in. I think it was in Kansas somewhere. And anyway, it's called The Great Game of Business, I think is what the name of the title is. I'm it's just kind of, that was quite a few years ago, but he laid out kind of an idea of helping everybody understand what their role is in the success of the company. And so that had an impact on me. And nobody
Yes,
really
yes.
prepared me for helping others understand their role in the overall success of the
Yeah,
company.
I think sometimes people come to our companies and they come because of us, and then we have that realization down the road of they came here because of me, and I need to lead them. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I love this idea of involving people in the company and what role they play, how they have ownership in it, even through ownership, to get people to understand they're part of the team and how we build those teams. Tell me this. How do you recognize when fear is information and not a stop sign?
Well, so first, to be fair, I my stop sign indicator is broken. I generally, my wife has always complained about that, as I, I don't have natural fear like a lot of people do. But um, I so I've kind of been on the other side of that, which is, you know, instead of treating what could go wrong as a rhetorical question that doesn't need an answer, I take it seriously. And so what I've done is I've actually learned to use other people's fear as information and ask people that are good at thinking about what could go wrong. And my wife is one of those people. If I ask the question, what could go wrong, she'll have 10 to 15 immediate answers, and I might have one. And so getting that kind of information, and it used to frustrate me. It felt like people were letting their fear block my goal or something like that. And now I've changed my attitude about that and said, basically, thank you for the input, because this is the kind of input that I don't have the proper sensors to get. So I need that input from other people, and I use their fear as information to inform, risk mitigation, if you will.
Yes, yes. You know, I love this because you use fear in the similar vein as I look at fear today, which is I see fear as simply an opportunity for growth.
Yeah,
I've started seeing that. We hear so much about the imposter syndrome and all the so many books and everything. And to me, that feeling or those feelings are also simply opportunities for growth. And how we handle those and how we move forward with fear, knowing that fear is real, even for someone like you that doesn't feel it and doesn't have the same sensors as some people. You're using someone else's to help guide you. The point being that fear isn't something to fear.
right. Yeah.
Tell me this. What impact are you most proud of? And I'm not talking about publicly or professionally, but personally.
Well, Um, yeah, I would say, first of all, so I raised three daughters. My wife and I raised three daughters, and um, I grew up in a family mostly of boys. I had a younger sister that we were separated when she was 5, so I was 11, I think. And anyway, so I grew up around boys all the time, and I had no idea really how to interact with girls as children and whatnot. So the fact that I and my wife were able to raise three independent, strong women that are doing really well in this world today. One of whom is the co-founder and partner in this company. My
Wow.
oldest daughter is actually our chief operating officer and the co-founder of the company. So I'm really proud of my children and the way that they turned out. I, I'm not sure how much that's my accomplishment or whatever, but I'll take it as my legacy anyway. I don't know how much credit to take for it. Of course, my wife gets a lot more credit, but I had to learn a lot about what seemed like an enigma, wrapped in a mystery to me of how uh, my daughters thought and operated, and of course, each one was unique, but it was really a journey for me to come to understand how to interact with them in a way that met their needs.
Wow. Tell me this, what boundary has become essential to your sustainability?
Time. So, I mean, I limit my time in the business, and I that, and then also like my workouts, they're on the schedule, and it they do move around because I have a little bit of flexibility, but I make sure that I get my workouts every time, 3 times every week. And right now, because I'm doing physical therapy, I try to get the little physical therapy things that I have to do in uh, at least 5 days a week. And so those are immovable boundaries for me. The other thing is as I mentioned, faith is very important to me, and just making sure that at every step I'm aligning my behavior and the choices that I make with the value system that I've come to embrace. And so, like for example, every Monday I have a document that I redo every year that lays out not only my goals and things, but my personal value system and whatnot. And I evaluate that every Monday, and I look at my schedule and I make sure everything is going to align with that and what I need to set aside time for. And people that are familiar with Stephen Covey and 7 Habits and whatnot, and the concept of rocks, I make sure that those things that are important to me are my rocks. And I've got time set aside for those things first and foremost. And also recognizing that I've got a limited number of hours that I can put into this
Yeah.
business. And so I have to be very purposeful about where I spend my time.
Yeah, this is great wisdom for people. I know I have a year-end practice that closes out the year, and I even use ritual to release things and evaluate what stays and set some intentions as the new year starts. And I turn that into of not the same but similar of a document, even a calendar, and I check in with it
Mm.
every now and then to see if I'm on track. It served me well over the past 35 plus years. I love these things that we do that keep us centered and on focus and on point. Tell me this, have you ever said no to growth because it wasn't aligned?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, we made a decision, and with Victoria Fide when we started it up, that we're not going to pay traditional commissions on sales because we wanted to have the freedom to say no. And it's really tough when salespeople, their primary form of income is commission, and they bring in an opportunity, and you say, yeah, we're not going to pursue this opportunity. And it's just not fair to them, right? I mean, in some ways. So we want to make sure that sales people are are compensated in a way that allows us still to say no without having huge impact on them. And that's a difficult thing to do, frankly. I mean, I don't feel like we've done it perfectly, and we're continually trying to find the right, the right mix of stuff like that. But yes, we've had to say no because it just doesn't fit our model and our vision. Like I said, our vision it's more so vision than value. I haven't had situations where it's like, we're not going to do business with this potential customer or whatever because they don't match our values. It's more so been, for example, we don't sell software. We always help to implement it. We're software vendor agnostic and system agnostic, and salespeople, they're like, man, it'd just be a lot easier if you'd be a, whatever, Microsoft partner or an Oracle or whatever, they pick a tool and sell it. And we're like, that's not our vision. That's not our model. That's not what we're looking to do. So we've actually turned down leads like, well, they don't want to use, and I do a lot of Microsoft stuff, and they don't want to use a Microsoft partner. So you can just be their unofficial Microsoft partner, and it's like, no, that's really not what we're about. So
Interesting.
turn
Yeah.
down that business.
How do you balance being a leader and a learner?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I haven't really thought much about that. Well, okay, I can see something that when he first said that, I was thinking about learning myself from other ways, but then realizing that, the important part of the crossover between leadership and learning is really learning from the people that you're leading. And so recognizing my significant gaps in capability and personality and things like that is first and foremost. So I go back to, my fearometer is broken. So, utilizing other people in that way and just really valuing them. But the same thing is, I'm a visionary. I have big ideas and whatnot. Well, if everything were up to me, a lot wouldn't get executed on. And so I need the people that are really good at execution. I need the people that are, just willing to do the day-to-day things that would bore me to death and that they love to do, those kinds of things. And so really recognizing the value that each person brings, and then simply asking lots of questions from the people that I'm leading about their opinions, their ideas. We have company meetings every week online. We meet together as a company quarterly. And one of the things that I love to do is to put out kind of mastermind type questions about our company to our employees, and especially at the quarterly meetings, and say, hey, here's a challenge. Let's get everybody together, break up into these working teams and work on these problems or work on these questions or these issues or whatever, and get me the kind of feedback that I need from people with a different perspective. And so, you're using leadership as a way to gather perspective that I don't otherwise have on my own.
Interesting. What's the boldest vision for what comes next for Victoria?
Well, I'm trying to change the way consulting is done in the industry. Um, and I liken it to when I was in, I don't know, junior high or high school. The microwave was just becoming big, and my older brother worked at Kmart, and I went there to meet him for something, and because he could drive and I couldn't, and he wasn't ready to get off work yet, but there was somebody doing a presentation on a microwave. And today nobody would ever have to have an explanation of how the microwave works and stuff like that. But this was, I don't know, GE or some large company that had these microwaves that they were selling, and they were big enough to be able to absorb the cost and capabilities of informing the public about this newfangled way of cooking. Um, and and smaller companies couldn't get into it because of that. And I feel like it's really bold because we're not big enough to change the industry. We're a tiny little company, and but the industry needs changing, and so I'm bold enough to say, well, let me get a let me give a crack at it and see what I can do. And so I've also been focusing on trying to build uh, coalitions and whatnot with other organizations, other consulting firms and companies and whatnot.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes, but that's probably my boldest thing that I'm trying to do right now.
Yeah, I remember that whole microwave thing when, there was so much going on about, oh, it's going to destroy us, going to kill us, all the fear-based stuff that started. And here, these years later, it seems to become a staple, even the opposite of people claiming I don't use a microwave, which makes me do something more special than you. It's kind of
Yeah,
funny how those things happen to us in
yeah,
technology. I think we're experiencing it again with AI right now, of the disparity of people who are full bore, let's jump on, and other people want to stick their heads in the ground, even
right.
though things are going to move forward, whether they want to stick their head in the ground anyway. So,
Yeah.
tell me this, what does renewal look like for you beyond the obvious of rest and time off? What does renewal look like?
I would say that there's probably um, two areas of renewal that I try to continuously focus on. So one is I would call it spiritual renewal. Some people would probably think of it more as mental and emotional and things like that. But just really spending focused time uh, on uh, what makes us important and what is important to us. And so I think renewing that um, focus. And then physically, as I mentioned, I wish that so I didn't really start uh, working out heavy and whatnot until I was 52 years old, and my body was failing me, and so I was a late comer to that. And then now I'm realizing that, okay, so I was doing powerlifting and things like that, but I really should have also been doing a lot of these uh, working on mobility and the really small muscles that are used for stability and whatnot. So um, I'm in the process right now of trying to renew my joints and trying to renew a lot of areas of my body that have lost some of that mobility and flexibility and whatnot. So there's physical renewal, and sometimes what that means is focusing on much smaller pieces that are key to making the big lifts and the big muscles work better,
Yes.
work properly, and not pull your joints out
Yeah,
of whack and stuff
I
like that.
got that. I have an avid Pilates practice for the last 9 years, and I joke with him frequently about breathe and relax. There was a time in my life there's no time to breathe and relax, and to learn that that's part of this idea, and mobility changing completely based on, as you say, these smaller muscles that we don't think about because people are so focused on the bigger ones, of not realizing that these smaller ones have a huge role in our longevity and how we move about and whether we get injured. It really is important.
Yeah.
That I prove that. Tell me this, Tori, what does legacy mean at this stage of your life?
Yeah, so there's the definition of it and then the value of it. So the definition is basically the way that you're seen after you leave this earth is to me what it means. And so what's the value of that? I think really it's a matter of what impact um, that what positive impact, what will other people look back on and point to and say, there was real value added to this world because of these things that Tory did. To me, that's really what legacy is about. And of course, the I really don't care what somebody I, who's never actually known me thinks a lot about, thinks about me probably as much as the people that are closest to me. And so I don't want to, I don't want to leave something impressive that if somebody reads about it, they think, oh, wow, he was a really great person, because that's easy to fake. It's the people that you've been around for years, that really aren't that impressed with you overall, that can look at back and say, and point to things and say, yeah, he really made a difference in my life, or in the life around me, or in the life of the others that we have a shared love for. And so, like those teachers we were talking about, I can't even think of that my ninth grade teacher's name, but he had a huge impact on me. And that's a legacy. That's a legacy that
Yes.
is really important. And so I want to leave that kind of legacy. I want my children and wife, if I predecease her, I want her to, and siblings and others to be able to say, yeah, Tory, brought this value in the world for me, or for these people around me.
Yeah. If a much younger Tory were watching this podcast, what would you tell him?
Yeah, I would tell them to think bigger. I would say you don't think big enough, and and I would also probably tell them your God is too small. Yeah, think that faith can really have a much bigger impact than you realize.
Love this. Love this. Tori, tell me this for a final question of today. If your story could leave the listeners with one invitation, what would it be?
Um, yeah, really for me, the biggest difference that was made in my life. As I mentioned, I had a lot of challenges in my youth, and I literally left home when I was 14, um, and that was definitely a challenge. Um, I would say that make it your number one priority to find out about God, about the Creator, about your value as a person. Make that your number one priority. And I know a lot of people, maybe struggle with that idea, but um, just if God exists, He can make Himself known to you. Call Him on it.
I love that. I love that. That's a great way for us to end this podcast. Tori, tell the viewers where they can find you and what you'd like to them to know as we close out today.
Sure. Well, probably the easiest way to find me is on victoriafide.com, and that's Victoria like the name, and then FIDE.com. And for those Latin people that took Latin, that's not the correct pronunciation, but we Americanized it like bona fide. So
Yes, yes, yes.
victoriafide.com. There's also torybjorklund.com. And then I'm on several, LinkedIn and stuff like that at Tory Bjorklund. And that's TORYBJORKLUND.
Thank you. Tori, thank you for being on Opening Pathways today.
Thanks so much for having me, Tom. I've really enjoyed it. Great
Thank you.
questions.
Great to have you here, yes. And to my viewers, this is Tom Lenoble, and I'll see you next time.